I've spent a lot of nights on the road. Long, quiet stretches of highway, where the only sound is your engine and the kind of silence that makes you check your mirrors twice. Most RV trips are peaceful, but sometimes you stop at the wrong rest area, park beside the wrong trail, or notice someone standing just a little too still on the side of the road. Tonight, I'm sharing 6 true RV camping horror stories from people who thought they were alone out there, until something, or someone, proved them wrong. Before we begin, comment where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, take a breath, because the first story starts with a noise under the RV floor that never should have been there. I bought my RV from a retired couple in Arizona who swore it had never given them a single bad night. Maybe that was true for them, but the first week I took it on the road, I learned very quickly that some nights don't care what an owner says. My plan was simple: drive from Flagstaff up toward Yellowstone, stopping at small RV parks, rest areas, or the occasional boondocking spot if the scenery felt right. I wasn't running from anything. I wasn't chasing some grand adventure. I just wanted space, silence, a moving home I could shut the world out with. The first few nights were peaceful enough. Cold air through the window, the low hum of the refrigerator, highway noise fading into nothing. But on night 4, the tapping started. It was around 1 a.m. I had just turned off the overhead lights and was lying in bed scrolling through old photos with the kind of tired nostalgia that only hits when you're alone in a parked vehicle in the middle of nowhere. Tap. A single sharp click beneath the floor, right under the bed. I froze. In an RV, you learn every sound quickly. The creaks, the settling, the sway of the frame in wind. This wasn't any of those. Tap, tap. 2 in a row. I sat up, listening, waiting for another. Nothing came. Eventually, I convinced myself the metal frame was cooling and shifting. Happens all the time in older rigs, right? But then, as I lay back down, tap. This time directly below where my head had been. I sat up again, heart thudding harder than I wanted to admit. Probably an animal, I whispered to myself. A raccoon maybe, or a stray cat. Something small wedged somewhere it shouldn't be. Still, raccoons don't tap like knuckles on metal. I got out of bed, flicked the lights on, and checked the cabinets, the water heater panel, even the storage compartments under the couch. No movement, no scratching, nothing. I debated going outside to check under the RV, but it was freezing and pitch black, and I didn't feel like meeting whatever desert creature had decided to explore my undercarriage. So I left it, told myself it was nothing. The next morning, when I stepped outside to stretch, I did crouch down for a quick look. Nothing unusual, no animals, no damage, no loose paneling. But something still bothered me. A small patch of dirt directly beneath the bed area. Looked disturbed. Not dug up exactly, just smoothed over, flattened, like someone had brushed their hand across it. I stared at it a long time, too long. Then I climbed back inside, shook the feeling off, and took the wheel again. But that night, at a different campground miles away, the tapping returned. And this time, it followed the rhythm of my breathing. The tapping didn't stop on night 5. It changed. I was parked in a small campground just outside Jackson, Wyoming, one of those quiet, almost eerie places where the nearest RV is 50 yards away and the silence feels too complete. I went to bed early, exhausted from driving, and for a while everything was normal. The fridge hummed, the heater clicked on, the wind nudged the siding now and then. Then, tap. A single knock beneath the bed, softer this time. Not metal on metal. More like someone pressing the metal from below, instead of striking it. Tap, tap. 2 slow, deliberate touches. I held my breath and stared at the ceiling. The tapping matched my breathing again. When I inhaled, tap. When I exhaled, tap. Not perfect, but close. Close enough to feel intentional. I forced myself to roll out of bed. I grabbed the flashlight and crouched down, pressing my ear against the cold vinyl floor. At first I heard nothing but my own pulse. Then, beneath it, something else. A whisper. Not words, not a hiss. Just the shape of someone trying to form sound with a dry throat. I jerked back so fast I hit my shoulder on the counter. There is no reason for another human voice to be under an RV at midnight. None. Every part of my body knew that instantly. I opened the door and stepped outside, scanning the gravel with the flashlight. Nothing. The night was still. The stars cut sharp lines through the cold air. My breath drifted out in long, pale clouds. I crouched and shined the light under the RV. The beam hit empty space. But then, something moved at the far end. Not a shape, just the ground shifting slightly, like someone pulling themselves deeper under the frame, out of sight. The dirt there looked smoothed again, freshly disturbed. "Hey!" I shouted, but the sound came out thinner than I wanted. No response, just silence pressing back from all sides. I backed away slowly and climbed inside, locking the door even though a lock means nothing against someone already under you. I barely slept. Every few minutes I'd hear something, a scrape along the pipes, a soft exhale under the kitchen area, a gentle thunk below the water tank. By dawn, I convinced myself I'd imagined half of it, until I got out to check the hookups. There were footprints beside my RV, bare footprints, in freezing dirt. The stride was short, almost like the person dragged their feet, and they led from the back bumper, toward the middle of the RV, right to the area beneath the bed, as if someone had crawled under there before I arrived, as if someone had been waiting. But the worst part? I drove 87 miles that day. New campground, new state line, different soil, different air. And that night, exactly at 1:07 a.m., tap, 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 followed by like he had come with me, like he was still underneath, like he knew I'd hear him. I didn't want to check under the RV again. I really didn't. But after 2 nights of tapping, whispering, and those bare footprints outside the rig, my brain wouldn't let it go. By the afternoon of day 6, I finally forced myself to crouch beside the RV in broad daylight, telling myself that sunlight would somehow make everything normal again. It didn't. The dirt beneath the RV looked disturbed in a way I hadn't noticed before. Not just smoothed, but compressed, like someone had been lying there for a long time. The shape wasn't clear, but there was a shallow depression roughly the length of a person. My stomach tightened. I slid my flashlight deeper under the frame. That's when I saw it. A small metal access panel hanging slightly open. It shouldn't have been. I'd checked all the service panels when I bought the RV. They were stiff, closed tight, sealed with screws. But this one, the one directly beneath where my bed was, had clearly been pushed open from inside the undercarriage. I got onto my stomach and reached for it. The moment my fingers touched the panel, something cold brushed the back of my hand. Dust. Or, no, not dust, a handprint. A full, perfect handprint pressed into the thin layer of dirt coating the underside of the RV. Long fingers, narrow palms. The print dragged slightly, like someone had been adjusting their grip. My chest tightened, and I scrambled back out so fast I nearly hit my head on the bumper. I paced around the RV, breathing hard, trying to make sense of it. Someone had been under there. Not an animal, not some trick of settling metal. A person. And not just once, multiple times. Enough to open an access panel, climb partly inside, and what? Lie there listening? Waiting? I tried to calm myself by checking the security camera mounted above the RV door. I opened the app and scrolled to the previous night's timeline. At 1:06 a.m., the video flickered, glitched, then froze for about 10 seconds. When the picture returned, the RV rocked slightly, as if someone had grabbed the rear bumper. The camera couldn't see beneath the rig, but the shadow on the gravel was unmistakable. A human silhouette, thin, bent at the knees, like someone crouched directly under the frame. I swallowed hard and scanned the area again. Nothing but sunlight and quiet. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was close. Too close. I drove again that evening, nearly 3 hours non-stop, just for the comfort of movement, of knowing I was creating distance between myself and whatever had crawled under my home on wheels. But later that night, parked at a pull-off outside Helena, Montana, as I tried to settle into bed, I felt something shift. The RV rocked, just slightly. Not from wind, not from me moving. Something beneath me had moved. Then, tap, tap, tap. 3 slow, perfectly spaced knocks, followed by a whisper I heard clear as breath on my ear. Here, like he wanted me to know he'd arrived. I barely slept after that night in Helena. Every sound felt sharper. Every vibration felt wrong. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that exhaustion and paranoia were starting to twist everything out of proportion. Then part of me whispered back, "You don't imagine handprints. You don't imagine a door opened from the inside. You don't imagine someone whispering beneath your floor." By the next afternoon, I pulled into a well-lit RV park just to feel safe. A real one this time. Assigned spots, hookups, people walking dogs, kids on scooters, normal life. I parked between 2 giant Class A rigs and told myself, nothing can happen here, not with this many people around. But the problem wasn't outside anymore. It was inside. The first sign was the storage cabinet. When I opened the pantry to grab dinner, all the cans on the lower shelf had been pushed to the back, stacked neatly, too neatly. I never stacked them like that. I always left a mess. I chalked it up to road vibration, even though that never happened before. Then I noticed something on the inside of the cabinet door. A smudge. Not dirt from my hands, not grease. A smear of something darker, shaped vaguely like a fingerprint dragged sideways. My stomach tightened. I wiped it off immediately, even though I didn't know why. The second sign came an hour later. While heating a can of soup, I felt a cold breeze on my ankles. Not from the door, not from the window, from the floor. I knelt, pressed my palm to the vinyl. Warm, but a faint current of air leaked up through the tiny seam near the bed, the seam above the access panel. A current of air, like something had opened a space underneath. I lifted the panel inside the RV, the interior cover. The screws were loose. They hadn't been earlier. My breath caught in my throat. The third sign made me freeze completely. Around midnight, someone walked past my RV. Footsteps on gravel, casual conversation, laughter. I peeked through the blinds just to reassure myself. Nothing strange. I closed them again, and that's when I heard it. A soft, shallow breath. Not outside, not under the RV, behind the driver's seat. I didn't move, didn't look, didn't breathe. The air felt wrong, tight, cold, like it was filling with someone else's exhale. The seat fabric made a faint sound, a subtle shift, like weight redistributing, like someone crouching slowly, carefully, trying not to make noise. My heartbeat pounded so loud, I was sure whoever was there could hear it. I reached for my phone with shaking fingers, opened the camera, set it to reverse, raised it just high enough to catch the reflection in the microwave door on the opposite wall. At first, I saw only darkness. Then, in the chrome surface, something moved, a shape rising, slowly. The top of a head, hair matted, long, sticking to a face I couldn't see. Then a hand, thin, gray with dirt, pressing lightly against the back of the driver's seat. The fingers curled over the headrest, not gripping, just resting, as if he'd been waiting for me to notice him. I didn't move for at least a full minute. I stood frozen, staring at the microwave reflection, at the hand resting on my driver's seat, terrified that if I blinked, he would rise fully into view. But when I finally turned around, the seat was empty. No hand, no breathing, just silence thick enough to choke on. I grabbed my keys, ready to throw myself out of the RV and sprint to the nearest lit site. But something on the floor caught my eye. A small object, a button. Not from my clothes, old cracked plastic, yellowed. Like it had been torn from a filthy shirt. Someone had dropped it, inside my RV. My stomach twisted so hard I nearly doubled over. I backed away and climbed onto the bed, curling my legs up like a child avoiding the monster under the mattress. My hands shook uncontrollably as I pulled up the security camera app on my phone. If he'd gotten inside, he must have shown up on the footage. He had to. But I wasn't prepared for what I saw. The timeline had dozens of motion alerts. Not from tonight. From every single night since I'd bought the RV. Footsteps near the bumper. Shadows sliding under the vehicle. Long pauses where the camera caught nothing but darkness. And then a sudden flicker, like something crawling out of range. My throat tightened as I tapped on the oldest clip. 4 nights ago, Arizona desert. At 12:58 a.m., the camera picked up movement near the rear bumper. The angle was terrible, low to the gravel, but enough to catch a thin arm reaching out from beneath the RV. A hand, feeling the air, checking if it was safe to emerge. Then the arm slid back under the frame, deliberately, quietly, like someone making room for himself. I felt my pulse thudding in my ears. I opened the next clip, and the next. Different states, different campgrounds, but the same pattern. 1:02 a.m., 01:08 a.m., 01:06 a.m., always around the same time. A figure crawling beneath my RV, sometimes dragging something, sometimes carrying nothing, but always returning before dawn. In one clip, the camera caught the clearest image yet, a face turning toward the lens from below the frame. I jolted so hard I dropped the phone. When I picked it back up with shaking fingers, I forced myself to look. The face was gaunt, hollow cheeks, hair tangled and matted like wet straw, eyes wide open, impossibly wide, staring up at the camera as if he could see me through it. And then he smiled. Not a happy smile, a tight, stretched smile that belonged to someone whose muscles weren't used to the expression. I slammed the phone face down on the bed, squeezing my eyes shut until the image faded from behind them. The moment I opened my eyes, the RV shifted again. Just a small movement, a settling motion, except I knew better now. He wasn't under the RV anymore. The weight came from the front. The driver's seat creaked, slow, deliberate, as if someone had just lowered themselves into it. My chest tightened so hard I couldn't breathe. I forced myself to look past the edge of the bed, just enough to see the faint silhouette through the dim cabin light. A shape sat in the driver's seat, still, silent, facing the windshield. Not me. Almost waiting. For what? I didn't know. But then he lifted one hand, the same thin, dirt gray hand I'd seen in the reflection, and placed it gently on the steering wheel, like he'd been practicing, like he'd been preparing, like he intended to drive. I didn't dare breathe. The silhouette in the driver's seat didn't move, didn't turn, didn't acknowledge me, just sat there with its hand resting lightly on the steering wheel, like someone learning how to hold something fragile. I slid off the bed as quietly as possible, heart pounding hard enough to shake my ribs. My phone was still in my hand. I opened the camera again, turning the screen toward the front of the cabin without lifting my head. At first, the darkness swallowed everything. Then, slowly, a shape resolved. Shoulders, a head bowed slightly forward, hair hanging in uneven strands, and then something that made my breath hitch. He was wearing my jacket, not exactly mine, but close enough. Same faded green, same torn seam beneath the right elbow, except I had that jacket stuffed in a storage bin. I hadn't touched it for days. My throat tightened painfully. I needed to get out, quietly, slowly. I reached for the door handle with trembling fingers. The RV creaked. The figure in the seat lifted its head, not turning, just rising slightly, as if listening. I froze. The air inside the RV thickened, heavy with a breath that wasn't mine. For a moment I thought he would stand, turn, come toward me. But instead, he lowered his head again, back into stillness. I eased the door open an inch at a time, terrified the old hinges would squeal. When the cold air finally hit my face, I slipped outside, barefoot on the gravel, and closed the door as gently as I could. I ran. Not far, just across the lot to a man walking his dog. I grabbed his arm so hard he nearly yelled. "There's someone in my RV," I gasped. "Call the police. Now." He must have seen something in my face because he didn't argue. Within minutes, 2 local deputies arrived. They approached the RV carefully, flashlights cutting through the windows. I stood behind them, shaking violently. One deputy opened the door. The other swept the cabin. Silence. Then he turned back toward me. "Nobody's in here." My vision blurred. "No," I whispered. He was sitting right there, in the seat, wearing my jacket, breathing in here. Both deputies exchanged a look, sympathy mixed with doubt. They searched the entire RV, under the bed, inside every cabinet, even the undercarriage. Nothing. "No signs of forced entry," one said. "Nothing out of place, except the loosened screws, the smudged cabinet, the button on the floor, the handprints. But now, all gone. Completely." I stepped back into the RV. It felt wrong. Larger somehow. Emptier in a way emptiness shouldn't feel. On instinct, I opened the security camera app again. The most recent alert was time-stamped 10 minutes earlier, when I ran outside. I tapped the clip. The camera showed me sprinting out of the RV. Then, a few seconds later, another figure stepped into frame. Thin, pale, hair matted, wearing my green jacket. He watched me run. Then he turned, looked straight into the camera, and slid beneath the RV frame in one fluid motion. The clip ended. I looked toward the deputies, ready to show them, but the clip blinked, glitched, and vanished. Gone. That night I drove for hours without stopping. Every so often the RV rocked softly, except the night was still, and the road was smooth, and sometimes, between the hum of the tires and the rumble of the engine, I swear I can hear breathing, right beneath my feet. I wasn't planning to stay the night. The RV park wasn't even on my route. But after 8 hours of driving through Oregon back roads and staring at pine trees that looked copy-pasted every mile, I needed a place to stop before I started drifting off behind the wheel. The sign appeared out of nowhere. Lone Fir RV, vacancy, $20 per night. A faded arrow pointed down a narrow gravel road. Cheap, quiet, isolated. Exactly the kind of place I usually liked. But the moment my tires rolled over the front entrance, something felt wrong. Not bad, just too still. Most RV parks have a kind of background noise. Generators humming, people talking, dogs barking at nothing, someone slamming a compartment door. But Lone Fir was silent. Not peaceful silent, not camping silent, a holding your breath kind of silent. Rows of old RVs lined the gravel loop, all different models, all sun-faded in different ways. Curtains were drawn, porch lights were on. A few had lawn chairs set outside, like someone had just gotten up to grab another drink. But no one was out there, no one sitting, no one walking a dog, no one smoking outside the door. Just empty chairs, empty lots, empty space. Like the whole park had paused mid-animation. I pulled up to the small office, a wooden shed with a single yellow bulb flickering above the door. Inside was a man in his late 60s, shoulders slumped, eyes red like he hadn't slept in weeks. He didn't greet me with a smile, didn't ask where I was coming from, didn't even look surprised to see a traveler show up this late. He just slid a clipboard across the counter. Site 14. He said softly. Don't wander around after midnight. His voice wasn't stern, it wasn't threatening, it was tired. So tired it made the hairs on my arms lift. I wasn't planning on walking around, I said, trying to lighten the mood. But he wasn't laughing, he didn't even blink. Good, he murmured. They get curious. I opened my mouth to ask what he meant, but he had already turned away, shuffling into the back room like the conversation drained what little energy he had left. I drove slowly to Site 14, my headlights cutting across the stillness. The RV next to mine had its blinds drawn, but I could see a TV flickering inside, static, looping over and over. No movement, no voices. I parked, hooked up the power, and stepped outside. A cold breeze moved through the pines, and somewhere in the row behind me, a curtain shifted, just a little, like someone had moved it with 2 fingers, then let it fall. I looked around. No footsteps, no doors closing, no sound at all, just that curtain, that tiny movement, too intentional to be the wind. I stood there for a long moment before climbing back inside my RV and locking the door. Something I almost never did in a park. As I closed the blinds for the night, I glanced once more at the RV across from me. Its porch light flickered twice, then stayed on, bright, unmoving, watching. I tried to convince myself I was just overtired. Long drive, weird park, creepy old manager, nothing more. I heated a frozen burrito in the microwave, turned on a podcast for background noise, and tried to pretend Site 14 was just another cheap stop on a long trip. But Lone Fir RV didn't behave like normal places. When I pulled the blinds open to get some night air, I froze. The RV across from me, the one with the static TV, had a silhouette in the window, just a shape, human, still, facing my direction. No movement, no shifting, just a person-shaped darkness lit by flickering television light. I blinked, hard. When I opened my eyes, the silhouette was gone. 5 minutes later, when I glanced out the side window, another RV, another window, another silhouette. This one was closer, almost pressed against the glass. I stepped back instinctively, heart hammering. The figure didn't move, didn't tilt its head, didn't step away, just watched. I shut the blinds again. I needed air. Reckless, maybe, but I stepped outside anyway. The cold Oregon night tightened around me instantly. I walked a slow lap around my RV. My shoes crunched the gravel in small, nervous steps, but the rest of the park made no sound at all. The row behind mine felt wrong, each vehicle perfectly still, curtains drawn tight except for one narrow gap, where something pale slid past the opening. A curtain closed, fast, like a hand pulling it shut. That's when I heard it, a television, from the RV beside me. Static, loud for 1 second, then abruptly silent. No clicks, no footsteps, just on, off. I backed toward my sight. Gravel shifted behind me, soft, light, like someone adjusting their footing. I spun, nothing there, but a porch light nearby buzzed, flickered, then glowed steadily again, as if someone had walked beneath it. I dove back into my RV, locked the door, locked the deadbolt, shut every blind tight. My breathing slowed. Then I saw the reflection in the microwave door. A figure stood in the window of the RV across from mine, closer now, facing me, and this time, it didn't disappear when I blinked. By the time the clock on my dashboard blinked 11:47 p.m., I was sitting upright in bed, fully awake, every blind shut tight. The manager's voice kept replaying in my head. Don't wander around after midnight. They get curious. I didn't want to find out who they were. Outside, Lone Fir RV Park looked frozen in time. Porch lights glowed. Static flickered in windows. And yet, not a single person had stepped outside since I'd arrived. 10 minutes crawled by. 11:58 p.m. Something changed. First, the wind stopped, abruptly, like someone had pressed a mute button on the entire forest. Then the temperature dipped. The hair on my arms lifted. My breath fogged inside the RV. I checked my phone. 11:59 p.m. And then, at 12 a.m. exactly, every porch light in the park went out, all at once, not flickering, not slowly dimming, just black. The silence grew so heavy I could feel it pressing against the RV walls. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, I really couldn't see anything outside. Not the road, not the other RVs, not even the faint outline of trees. Then came the footsteps, soft at first, like someone testing the gravel. Crunch, 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 moving between RVs, not in a straight line, not toward any one site, just wandering, but not aimlessly. The steps were slow, measured, rhythmic, as if several people were pacing the park in sync. I pressed my back against the wall, holding my breath. A cold draft slid under the door. Then something brushed the bottom step, lightly, like a hand dragging across it. Crunch. Closer now. Then, the door handle clicked. My chest seized. I stared at the handle as it moved, millimeter by millimeter, like someone testing how loudly they could turn it without being noticed. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would shake the whole RV. I whispered, "Please go away." The handle twitched, held, turned slowly once, then stopped. Crunch, crunch. The footsteps drifted away, but only for a moment. From the RV to my left came a sound, a low, dragging scrape, like something heavy shifting on the floor inside. Then a whisper of movement. A window creaked open a crack. Static flared from the TV. I forced myself to look through the gap in my blinds. I shouldn't have. Across the lane, in the RV with the flickering television, the silhouette was back. Standing closer now, pressed against the glass, watching my RV. Then, impossibly, a second silhouette slid into view beside it, and a third, all unmoving, all staring. My breath caught. Then the static from their RV cut out. A voice, a faint whisper, drifted out into the cold air. "He's awake." My stomach dropped. The footsteps returned. Multiple sets now, moving quickly, moving with purpose, heading straight for my sight. The manager's warning suddenly felt less like advice and more like a countdown. I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. I sat in the dark, clutching my phone, listening to footsteps circle the RV every hour or so. Never running, never rushing, just pacing, waiting. By dawn, the park looked normal again. Lights on, curtains still, no footprints in the gravel except my own. It made the night feel like a hallucination, until I opened the door. On my step lay a small object, a remote control, old, yellowed, buttons worn to nothing. The same kind of remote I'd seen in the RV with the flickering TV. I nudged it with my shoe and stepped back. Someone had placed it there, intentionally. Before I could decide what to do, a knock rattled my door. Not light, not polite, urgent. I flinched so hard I hit the counter behind me. But when I looked through the peephole, relief broke through my panic. It was the manager. He looked even worse in daylight. Pale, sunken-eyed, sleeves rolled up like he hadn't finished a single night of sleep in months. When I opened the door, he didn't step inside. He just stared at me with this exhausted dread. "Did they bother you?" he asked. The phrasing chilled me. Not, "Did you hear something?" Not, "Did someone try to break in?" But, "Did they bother you?" As if they were regular guests with behavioral problems. I don't know what I saw, I said, but something walked around my RV last night. Multiple somethings. He nodded once. Slow, sad. That's how it starts. I swallowed hard. Who are they? For the first time, emotion cracked through his face. Not fear, not anger, but guilt. He rubbed a trembling hand over his jaw. "This park used to be full," he said quietly. "Families, retirees, travelers passing through. We had potlucks on weekends, movie nights, kids running everywhere." He looked out across the rows of silent RVs like he was remembering something painful. 6 years ago, 17 people vanished in one night. The words fell like a stone. "No signs of struggle," he continued. "No broken locks, no tire tracks leaving the park. They just disappeared. Like the lights went out, and when they came back on," he gestured toward the row of old RVs. "Those were all that remained." I stared at him. "Those RVs are occupied." I saw he cut me off with a sharp shake of his head. "No, they aren't." My skin crawled. The county shut this place down after the disappearances. People stopped coming, except, his voice dropped to a whisper. They didn't leave. Whatever took them kept their routines, their habits, their lights. I backed away a step without meaning to. "Last night," he said, "they noticed you." I felt ice flood my chest. "So what do I do?" He exhaled shakily. "Leave before dark. Don't look back. And whatever you do," his eyes locked onto mine, "don't take anything with you that they touched." My gaze drifted to the remote sitting on my step. And for the first time, I wondered, was it a warning or an invitation? I didn't waste time. The moment the manager walked away, I threw everything back into drawers, slammed cabinets shut, and disconnected the power cable with shaking hands. I wasn't staying another hour in that place, daylight or not. But as I climbed into the driver's seat, the first crack of fear hit me. The remote on my step was gone. I hadn't moved it. I hadn't touched it. It was just gone. I didn't look for it. I didn't want to know where it went. I started the engine. The RV rumbled to life, louder than usual, echoing across the silent park like a warning siren. I pulled out of Site 14 and made for the exit loop. The manager watched from his office doorway, hands buried in his pockets, shoulders slumped like he already knew I wouldn't make it far. I rolled down my window. "Thank you," I said. "For the warning." He swallowed. "Keep your eyes forward. Whatever you hear, don't stop." My pulse kicked hard. I drove. The exit road stretched between two rows of old RVs. Even in daylight, they looked wrong, empty, yet lived in. Curtains drawn tight, porch mats perfectly aligned, lawn chairs turned toward the road as if waiting for someone to sit. Halfway down the lane, my radio turned on by itself. Static, loud, violent. I slapped the power button. Nothing. I pulled the fuse. Still static. Then a voice formed inside the noise. "Don't leave." My chest tightened. I pushed the gas pedal harder. The RVs on both sides seemed closer now, or maybe I was imagining it, but their curtains were no longer shut. Every window I passed had an opening. Every opening had a face, pale, still, tilted just slightly wrong, watching me. I gripped the wheel so tightly my hands went numb. "Don't look," I whispered. "Just drive." But something hit the side of the RV. Thud. Hard enough to rock the vehicle. Then another. Thud from the other side. I stared straight ahead. The exit sign was there, maybe 100 yards away. A simple wooden board nailed between two posts. Almost out, almost safe. Then, someone stepped into the road. Not walked, not ran. Stepped into existence. A man-shaped outline, hollow where the face should be. Limbs too long, posture too still. I slammed the brakes. The figure didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't breathe. It just stood there, blocking the exit, like a marker placed by something that didn't want me to cross. Behind me, gravel shifted. Lots of gravel. I checked the rear camera. Silhouettes. Dozens. Emerging between the RVs, each one moving closer in slow, disjointed motions. The radio static grew violent again. "Stay! Stay! Stay!" I shot forward in a burst of panic. The figure in the road didn't move. I braced, expecting a collision. But when the RV hit where it stood, there was nothing. No impact. No resistance. It vanished, like mist in sunlight. I tore down the gravel road until the trees swallowed the RV park behind me, and the static died in the speakers. Only then did I slow down enough to breathe. For the next 30 miles, nothing happened. No voices, no shadows, no footsteps behind me. But when I stopped for gas later that afternoon, I saw something lodged in my door handle. A remote control. Old. Yellowed. Buttons worn to nothing. And when I picked it up, the porch lights in memory flickered behind my eyes. Twice. I didn't go home. Didn't go to the next campground. Didn't even stay on the main highway. I drove for hours until the trees thinned, the sky brightened, and my mirrors finally stopped reflecting shapes I didn't want to look at twice. By late afternoon, exhaustion hit me like a wall. I pulled into a roadside motel, the kind with faded doors and a Coke machine that probably hadn't worked in a decade. At that point, I didn't care. 4 walls and a bed were all I needed. I locked my RV, locked the motel door, triple-checked the curtains, and collapsed onto the mattress. For a while, it was quiet. No static, no footsteps, just the distant hum of highway traffic. I almost convinced myself I was safe. Almost. The knock came at 9:12 p.m. Soft, polite, too polite. I froze. No one should have known what room I was in. I hadn't even gone to the front desk. I used the night drop box. There was no reason for anyone to knock on my door. Another tap. 2 knuckles this time. Talk. Talk. I approached the peephole slowly. Nothing. Nobody in sight. But something lay on the ground. A shape. Small. Rectangular. My stomach dropped. I cracked the door. Just an inch. It was the remote. Old. Yellowed. Buttons worn to nothing. The same one for my step. The same one that vanished before I left the park. I didn't touch it. I shut the door. Locked it again. Turned on the motel TV for background noise. The TV buzzed with snowy static for a moment before settling on a random channel. Then the volume bar moved. Up, up, up. I grabbed the motel remote. Nothing changed. The bar kept rising until the static roared. Then the screen shifted. I saw my RV, parked in Site 14. Lights off. Curtains closed. Door slightly open. Another flicker. The view moved. Closer to the RV door, like a camera was walking toward it. Then the inside of my RV, dark, still, empty, except for the faint outline of a human shape sitting in the driver's seat. Watching the windshield, waiting. My phone vibrated. Bluetooth device connected. Lone fur remote. The motel lights flickered. The static deepened into a multi-layered voice. Closer. Something scraped outside my motel door. A slow, dragging movement. Then the doorknob turned. Once. Testing. I backed into the far corner. Go away. The voice from the TV answered. We didn't follow. You brought us. The doorknob stopped. Silence. Then the porch light outside flickered twice, just like at the RV park. When I opened my eyes again, sunlight was bleeding through the curtains. The door was shut, locked, no remote, no shadows. I believed it was over, until I got back into my RV and saw something on the dashboard. A new remote, buttons worn, plastic yellowed, and beneath it, a sticky note. Site 14 is waiting. There's an unspoken rule among people who travel by RV. A rule older than the manuals, older than campground etiquette, older than the jokes about emptying a black tank on a windy day. If something knocks on your RV past midnight, you don't knock back. My name's Jamie, I'm 34, and I've been living on the road for almost 5 years now. I've weathered breakdowns in the Utah desert, lightning storms in Wyoming, and a night in Mississippi where raccoons tried to steal my entire cooler. I thought I'd seen everything, but I'd never heard knocking, not like this. It happened on a warm August night last year, somewhere in Nevada. I couldn't tell you exactly where. If you've ever driven Route 50 or any of the smaller roads branching off it, you know what I mean. Long, empty stretches where the world feels too wide and too quiet, like sound doesn't know where to go. I'd pulled into a rest stop just past midnight, not an official RV park. Just a gravel lot beside a faded restroom building, a single overhead light buzzing with bugs, and an old pickup truck parked way off in the corner with no one inside. The sky was beautiful, at least. A wide river of stars spilled across empty desert. Nights like that make you forget how lonely the road really is. I made dinner, washed up, climbed into bed, and scrolled on my phone until my eyes burned. Typical night, nothing strange, until the RV shook. Just once. A tiny, subtle nudge, like something heavy had leaned on the side of the vehicle and shifted its weight. I sat up. I listened. The desert was silent except for the buzzing light outside and the occasional gust of warm wind. Nothing that should make the RV move. I lay back down, tried to relax, and then came the sound that still haunts me. Tock, tock, tock. 3 slow knocks on the back wall of the RV. Not on the door, not on a window, the back wall. I froze. There are only a few possibilities when you hear something like that on the road. A prankster, an animal, a gust of wind hitting something metal. But these knocks weren't random. They were spaced out, even, deliberate. I cleared my throat and whispered to myself, probably a loose ladder or bike rack. Something logical. Something that didn't involve another person standing 6 inches from where I slept. I checked my phone. 1:27 a.m. 3 more knocks. Tock, tock, tock. This time slightly harder, like whoever or whatever was outside wanted to make sure I heard it. I held my breath, listening for footsteps, voices, movement. Nothing. Just that dead, heavy desert silence. My palms were sweating. I wiped them on the blanket, trying to shake off the fear crawling up the back of my neck. Eventually, the knocking stopped, but the tension didn't, because some part of me, the curious, stupid part, wondered what would happen if I knocked back, and that was the mistake. I wish I could say I resisted the urge, that I followed the rule every RV traveler knows. But curiosity does something to you when you're alone in the middle of nowhere. It makes you stupid in a quiet, convincing way. So after the knocking stopped, I waited. 1 minute, 2, 3. No footsteps, no voices, no crunch of gravel. Just the soft hum of the overhead light outside and the wide, empty desert. Then, without letting myself overthink it, I lifted my hand and knocked back. Tock, tock. 2 taps on the inside of my RV wall. Light, barely audible. I held my breath. Silence. A long stretch of it. I almost laughed at myself until something answered. Tock, 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 tock. 4 knocks. Fast, excited. Not mocking my rhythm, not copying it, building on it. My skin went cold. I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, staring at the back wall where the sound had come from. Something outside had heard me. Something outside was listening. I reached for my phone with shaking hands, turned on the flashlight, and slowly moved toward the rear window. I didn't lift the blinds. God, no. I only leaned close enough to see if any shadow moved across the thin fabric. Nothing. Just the faint outline of the desert night. I backed away again. Maybe it was an animal? Maybe metal contracting in the cold. Maybe thud. Something hit the rear bumper, hard enough to shake the entire RV. My heart slammed against my ribs. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, circling, crunching through gravel in a wide loop around the RV. Deliberate, unhurried. Like whoever was out there wasn't afraid of being heard. I turned off my flashlight and crouched low, listening. The footsteps moved along the driver's side, paused near the front tire, then continued around the passenger side. Then, a knock. Not on the back wall this time, on the door. Tock, tock, tock. Right beside me. I covered my mouth with both hands, squeezing my eyes shut. The knob rattled once, just once. Testing. I didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't move. The footsteps finally drifted away, slow as before, heading toward the back of the RV. I peeked through the tiny gap in the curtain near my bed. For half a second, just long enough to register, I saw a shape move past the rear window. Tall, wrongly proportioned, leaning too far forward, like its spine wasn't built to stand upright. It stopped beside the ladder on the back of my RV, tilted its head, listened, then tock, tock. It knocked again. 2 knocks, my exact rhythm. My breath caught. My whole body went cold. That's when I realized it wasn't copying me out of malice. It was responding, like we were having a conversation. I backed away from the window, gripping the counter to steady myself. My legs felt light, like they didn't belong to me anymore. The instinct to run was overwhelming. But run where? I was in the middle of the Nevada desert, miles from anything resembling safety. The footsteps outside stopped. For a moment, the silence returned, thick, heavy, waiting. Then, clang. A metal-on-metal sound jolted through the RV. It came from underneath. I dropped to my knees without thinking, pressing my ear against the floor. The vinyl was cold against my cheek. For a second, there was nothing. Then something scraped the undercarriage, slowly, deliberately, like fingernails dragging across steel. The entire frame vibrated. My throat closed. I scrambled backward toward the driver's seat, but then, tock, tock. 2 knocks from directly beneath the floor. Not on the wall, not on the door, beneath me. And they were spaced exactly like the rhythm I'd tapped earlier. I covered my mouth, forcing myself not to scream. The scraping continued, crawling from the rear bumper toward the front axle. Whatever it was moved in short, uneven bursts, like it was pulling itself forward with arms too long or legs bent the wrong way. Then the knocking changed. Tock, tock, talk. Short, sharp, impatient, almost playful. I crawled as far away from the source as I could, hugging myself against the kitchenette cabinets. My breath fogged the air in front of me. Inside the RV, where the temperature should have been warm, another scrape. Closer now. Something shifted weight, causing the RV to dip slightly on the passenger side, as if it were lifting itself. I forced myself to look through the tiny window above the sink. Just a quick glance, just enough to confirm my nightmares were real. Something tall was crouched beside the front wheel well, its limbs folded in unnatural angles, joints bending too far inward. Its head tilted to one side, listening. Always listening. I ducked immediately, heartbeat stuttering in my ears. This wasn't a person. This wasn't an animal. This was something that understood knocking. Something that wanted me to keep playing. The RV creaked again as it shifted its weight. Then came the sound that broke me, a low hum. Deep. Resonant. Like the beginning of a word trying to form through a throat that wasn't built for speech. I slapped both hands over my ears. No, I whispered. No, no, no. The hum grew louder. Two, and then thud. A violent impact against the side door. The entire RV rocked sideways. Pots clattered in the sink. A cabinet flew open. My backpack crashed to the floor. The knocking began again, rapid, relentless. Talk, 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 talk. Not a rhythm, not a pattern, a demand. My hands shook uncontrollably as I crawled toward the driver's seat. I needed to leave, now, even if it meant running over whatever was under me. I turned the key in the ignition. Nothing happened. I turned it again. Still, nothing. Then, from outside, inches from the driver's door, talk, talk. Slow now, controlled, precise. It knew exactly where I was sitting, and it was waiting. My fingers were numb on the ignition key. The RV refused to start. Again, click, click, silence. Outside, the knocking had stopped, which was somehow worse. Silence meant it had changed position. Silence meant it was thinking. I took a shaking breath and tried the key one last time. The engine roared to life. The moment the headlights flared, something moved beside the window, too fast for my eyes to follow. I didn't wait to find out what it was. I slammed the RV into drive and floored the gas. The tires spun gravel into the air as the vehicle lurched forward. I didn't check the mirrors, didn't look left or right. The only thing that mattered was getting away from this place, this rest stop that felt less like a patch of land and more like a trap waiting for the right idiot to step into it. A shadow crossed the beam of the headlights. Tall, bent, wrong. I swerved, too late. Whatever it was didn't hit the ground. It hit the side of the RV. The whole frame rocked as something heavy slapped against the passenger wall, then scrambled upward, fast, too fast. I heard claws, or something like claws, gripping metal, dragging itself toward the roof. The RV groaned under the shifting weight. My breath shattered in my chest. No, no, no. I pressed the accelerator harder. The RV surged onto the empty highway, wobbling under the unfamiliar load on top of it. The desert blurred past. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely keep the vehicle straight. The roof creaked. Then, bam! A single, heavy impact right above the driver's seat. Dust fell from the ceiling. The sun visor rattled. My teeth clacked together. It was right above me, moving, pacing. I could hear each step, slow and curious, like it was testing the structure. Then it stopped, directly over my head. I shut my eyes for half a second and forced myself to keep driving. The highway was empty, no towns, no gas stations, nothing but desert stretching out endlessly in both directions. My phone buzzed from the cup holder, a notification. Camera 1 motion detected, my exterior roof cam. Against every instinct for survival, I tapped the live feed. The footage loaded in grainy black and white, and then something was crouched on the roof, facing the camera, facing me. Its limbs were too long, elbows bent the wrong way, fingers spread wide like it was bracing itself against the wind. Its head was inches from the lens, no face, just a distorted impression of one, like a featureless mask sagging in the heat. Then, it lifted one hand and knocked on the lens. Tock. The roof shook above me. Then again, tock. I slammed the laptop shut, nearly tossing the phone to the floor. My heart felt like it would burst through my ribs. I gripped the wheel and shouted, "Get off! Get off!" The thing shifted its weight, and the whole RV leaned right. For a sickening moment, I thought it might flip the entire vehicle. But then, the sound changed. I heard wind tearing past, a scrape, a final thud, and then silence. Just highway noise, just the engine, just me gasping for air. I didn't look at the camera again. I didn't slow down for miles. But even as the sky began to change color, I knew, from the way the roof still ticked occasionally, like cooling metal, it wasn't gone. Not completely. Something had stayed behind. I didn't stop driving until the sun was high enough to burn the fear into something numb and distant. My hands were aching from gripping the wheel, and the roof still made those quiet, cooling ticks, each one sounding too much like the echo of a knock. I needed somewhere crowded, somewhere normal, somewhere with witnesses. By noon, I pulled into a busy RV park outside Ely, Nevada. Families grilling, kids biking between sites, retirees sitting in folding chairs reading newspapers, the kind of place where nightmares shouldn't be able to follow you. Seeing people made me think, briefly, that I'd imagined everything. I checked in, parked, hooked up the power, and went inside. The RV felt smaller than usual, like the walls remembered what had happened. I turned on every light. I showered. I ate. I tried to breathe again. By 8 p.m., the park was settling down. Smoke from fire pits drifted lazily through the air. Someone played old country music from a portable speaker. Normal. Comforting. I convinced myself I was safe. I shouldn't have. The first knock came at 1:27 a.m., the exact time as before, only this time, it didn't come from outside. Talk. Inside the RV, inside the wall, behind the kitchenette. I froze mid-breath. No footsteps on gravel, no shadows passing the windows. Just that single, hollow knock from within the structure of my own home on wheels. I pressed my hand to the cabinet. Something tapped back. Talk. Talk. 2 knocks. My rhythm. My mistake. My heart jammed itself into my throat. I staggered backward as the knocking continued. Talk. 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 Low. Deliberate. Exploring. I fumbled for my phone and opened the exterior camera feeds. Nothing on the roof. Nothing on the sides. Nothing outside at all. Then a notification appeared. Undercarriage cam. Motion detected. My breath faltered. I tapped the feed. For a second the image glitched. Static. White noise. Distortion. And then it cleared. Something was pressed against the undercarriage camera. Not a face. Not really. More like an impression of one, smeared across the lens, as if someone had tried to push their head through a space too small for it. Long fingers stretched past the frame, gripping pipes and wiring. Its limbs twitched in small, hungry motions, and then, with a horrible slowness, one hand reached upward, toward the floor, toward me. The knocking intensified. Tock, 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 tock. Not a pattern anymore, a command. I backed away until I hit the bedroom door. My whole body was shaking. The realization settled over me like ice. It wasn't trying to get in. It was already inside the walls, learning the structure, testing where it was weakest, following the rhythm I'd taught it. The undercarriage camera flickered again. A new angle. It had moved, fast. Now it clung directly beneath the bedroom, as if it knew exactly where I stood. My phone buzzed again. Another notification. Would you like to pair with device RV_knocker? My blood ran cold. Then, the final knock. Soft, close, right behind my headboard. Talk. A breath I didn't want to hear followed it. Raspy, curious, almost excited. I bolted out of the RV barefoot, sprinting into the night, screaming for help. People poured out of their RVs, confused, panicked. Someone called 911, but by the time the sheriff arrived, the knocking had stopped. Nothing was under my RV. Nothing was inside the walls. No signs of forced entry. The only thing they found was a single indentation on the metal frame underneath. 2 small dents, like knuckles, exactly my rhythm. People joke about having a doppelganger out there somewhere. A stranger who looks just like you. Same build, same height, same haircut. I used to laugh at that idea. Until Cedar Bend. Until the night I walked into an RV park and realized I wasn't the only version of me there. It was early October when I pulled into the place. Oregon in the fall has that strange, cinematic gloom to it. Air wet enough to cling to your clothes, sky stuck in a permanent blue-gray haze, and the smell of pine everywhere. I'd been on the road for 2 weeks and needed somewhere quiet to rest. Somewhere with a functioning shower and maybe halfway decent Wi-Fi. Cedar Bend RV Park looked good enough. Small, half empty, cheap handwritten sign out front. I should have paid more attention to that sign. Or maybe to the fact that the front office door was locked, though the lights were on inside. A piece of paper was taped to the glass. Pick any site. I'll come find you. I remember frowning at the wording. Not, I'll come check you in. Not, I'll be around shortly. I'll come find you. It felt off, but I shrugged it off. Most RV park owners were quirky. Some were downright bizarre. You learn not to judge. I picked Site 17, a quiet corner spot near the tree line, and hopped out to plug in my power cable. That's when I saw the first one. At Site 15, 2 spots down, stood a man facing away from me. Gray jacket, dark jeans, same height as me, same hair color, same way of standing, shoulders slightly slouched, left foot turned out just a little. I thought he was just another traveler, so I gave a polite, "Hey, how's it going?" He didn't react, didn't turn, didn't move, didn't even shift his weight. Just stood there, staring at the dense wall of pine trees behind the park. I brushed it off and bent down to secure my cable. A few minutes later, while straightening up, my eyes drifted towards Site 12 across the loop. Another person, standing outside their RV, same jacket color, same stance, same build, also facing away. A cold trickle slid down my spine. I scanned around the park more carefully. Site 8, Site 10, Site 19, all of them, scattered across Cedar Bend, had someone standing outside their RVs, all turned away, all completely still, all wearing what looked like my jacket. I swallowed hard and walked a few steps toward the nearest one, lifting a hand. "Hello? You need something?" No response. I blinked, took 2 steps closer. And when I looked up again, the person was gone. Not walked away, not entered their RV, just gone. I stared at the empty space where they'd been standing, heart thudding, breath coming faster than it should have. That was the moment I realized something was very wrong with Cedar Bend, and that I wasn't alone. Not in the way you'd hope. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that the people I saw were just dressed similarly, that fatigue was making my brain see patterns where there were none. But as daylight faded into a pale, washed-out evening, the feeling grew heavier, as if the entire park was holding its breath. I walked toward the laundry room near the center of the property, more to stretch my legs than anything. The place looked abandoned, cracked concrete steps, vending machines humming with an old fluorescent buzz, windows fogged from the cool air outside. When I pushed the door open, I froze. Someone was inside, standing in front of the washing machines, facing away from me. Same posture, same height, same gray jacket, left foot angled out exactly like mine. I knew, deep down, instinctively, it was one of them. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Didn't mean to bother you." The figure didn't turn, didn't shift, didn't react at all, so I stepped inside. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead with a brittle crackle. My shoes squeaked on the damp linoleum as I approached slowly, cautiously. "Just passing through," I said again. This time, the figure spoke, but the voice wasn't quite a voice. It was soft, airy, like hearing your own echo inside a large, empty room. Just passing through. My words, repeated, delayed, twisted slightly wrong. A chill wrapped around my spine, squeezing. I stepped back. The figure copied me, perfectly. Same foot placement, same angle, same timing. It lifted a hand and adjusted the collar of its jacket, exactly how I do when I'm nervous. I turned and left the laundry room, heartbeat rattling in my ears. The door, which I'd left open, slowly eased shut behind me. Back at my RV, things were not where I left them. My shoes, usually lined neatly, were turned outward at the same angle I stand. My coffee mug sat on the counter with a faint ring beneath it, though I hadn't used it. And on my bed, my gray jacket, still warm. Outside the window at Site 15, a figure stood facing away. Same jacket, same height, same posture. Then slowly, it lifted a hand and ran it through its hair, exactly the way I do. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the image came back. That figure outside Site 15, running its hand through its hair. My gesture, performed with unsettling precision. By sunrise, the air outside the RV felt colder than it should have, as if something had siphoned away the warmth. A thin fog clung to the park, making the rows of RVs look like pale silhouettes disappearing into the tree line. I stepped outside cautiously, half expecting one of them to be standing right beside my door. Nothing. No movement, no footsteps, no morning chatter. Cedar Bend was silent, too silent. I took a walk along the inner loop of the park. The fog wasn't thick, but it had that strange density that makes your breathing sound louder than it should. My boots crunched on gravel in soft, uneven intervals. Crunch, crunch. Then another pair of footsteps joined mine, matched, perfectly. I froze. The second pair stopped too. I slowly turned. No one behind me. But as I listened, really listened, I realized something horrifying. The second rhythm was a half second after mine, like someone trying to imitate the timing, trying to learn, trying to sync. I forced myself to keep walking, but my pace quickened. The echoing footsteps quickened too. I turned the corner around Site 9, and my breath caught in my throat. 3 figures stood behind one of the RVs, shoulder to shoulder, all facing away, all dressed like me. Their heads were tilted slightly, the same way I tilt mine when I'm trying to hear something far away. For a moment, they didn't move. Then, the figure on the left lifted its right hand. The figure in the middle lifted its left hand. The figure on the right adjusted its jacket. All movements I recognized. All movements I've made thousands of times without thinking. One of them scratched its jaw, my exact nervous tick. Another one shifted its weight, my posture after standing too long. They weren't random copies. They were studying me, practicing me, piece by piece. I stepped backward, gravel crunching under my heel. Instantly, all three figures mirrored the movement, stepping backward in perfect unison, same heel-first motion. I couldn't breathe. I turned to run, but the fog thickened suddenly, like a curtain being pulled across the park. I could barely see 5 feet ahead. My heart hammered in my chest as I stumbled blindly toward my RV. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps behind me. Not mine. Not mimicking now. Following. Close. I reached my RV and fumbled with the door handle, shoving myself inside and locking it behind me. My hands shook violently. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the exterior cameras. The feeds flickered in and out through the fog. Front cam, empty. Driver's side cam, fog. Rear cam, static. Passenger side cam, 3 silhouettes standing perfectly still, their heads turning in small, searching motions, like they were listening for where I'd gone. Then, one of them stepped forward, right up to the camera. Not close enough to reveal a face, never the face, but close enough that I could see the fabric texture of the jacket and the way the shoulders slouched, my posture, but heavier, wronger, over-exaggerated, like they were practicing, but still getting it slightly wrong. Something in my stomach twisted painfully. They weren't just copying me anymore, they were becoming me. And I had no idea how many of them Cedar Bend had made. I kept every door locked, every window latched, every curtain drawn tight enough that not even a sliver of fog could slip through. But the RV felt wrong, like the air itself had been disturbed. I paced from the front to the back, checking corners, checking cabinets. My shadow stretched across the walls in long, unnatural shapes as I moved. Every few seconds, I'd hear a tiny sound, too soft to place, too deliberate to ignore. A floor creak, a faint shuffle, something brushing lightly against the interior wall. I told myself it was the wind, but there was no wind. Finally, I stopped and stood in the center of the RV, trying to listen past the pounding of my own heartbeat. That's when I heard it, a quiet exhale, inside the RV. Not mine. I spun around so fast I nearly slipped, staring at the dark hallway leading toward the bedroom. My throat tightened. The door was half open, just enough for darkness to gather behind it like a living thing. I forced myself to step forward. 1 step, 2. My foot hovered at the threshold. A soft thump sounded from inside the bedroom. Not loud, not aggressive, just present. Like someone shifting their weight on the mattress. I swallowed and pushed the door slightly wider. The hinge squeaked, a small, sharp sound slicing through the heavy silence. The room was empty, visually empty, but the air felt occupied, like walking into a room where someone had been standing just seconds earlier. The faint smell of pine clung to the sheets, the same smell drifting from the copies outside. I backed out and closed the door. That's when my phone buzzed. A notification slid across the top of the screen. Inside, motion detected. Living area. My stomach dropped. I hadn't moved for at least 20 seconds. Hands trembling, I opened the interior camera feed. The small fisheye lens I installed above the doorway months ago for security. The image flickered to life. Empty RV. Empty sofa, empty kitchenette. Nothing unusual. Then the timestamp ticked forward, and for exactly 2 frames, barely half a second, something walked past the lens. A shoulder, my shoulder. The same jacket, the same slouched posture. The movement was too smooth, too quiet, as if it had learned the way I walk but hadn't yet mastered the weight of it. The clip jumped back to static. Something was in here with me, trying to be me. I stepped back toward the main door, reaching slowly for the lock. Every muscle in my body urged me to run, but I couldn't hear where it was, couldn't risk moving blind. The smell of pine grew stronger. Behind me, I turned slowly. The hallway was darker now, as if someone were standing just out of sight, blocking what little light came through the cracked bathroom door. I whispered, "Who's there?" For a moment there was only silence. Then, a faint mimic of my own voice answered from the darkness. "Who's there? Practicing." I lunged for the door, unlocked it, and stumbled outside into the cold fog. The RV behind me shifted slightly, as if someone inside had stepped closer to the door I just escaped through. The fog outside was colder than I remembered, thicker too, like it had weight, like it pressed against my skin as I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the far edge of the park, where the rows of RVs dissolved into dark pine trees. My breath tore in and out of my chest in sharp bursts. Nothing chased me, nothing moved, but I could feel eyes on me, or versions of eyes. I forced myself to circle wide and approach my RV from the opposite direction, keeping low between parked vehicles. The fog muffled every sound, turning the world into a soft, suffocating blur. My RV stood where I'd left it, the lights off, the door closed. Still, too still. I hesitated, then slowly pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking badly enough that it took 2 tries to open the camera app. The live feed from the interior camera loaded. At first, darkness. Just the faint outline of the kitchenette from dim emergency LEDs. Then, movement. Someone shifted in the driver's seat. Even through the grainy feed, I recognized the shape. My jacket, my shoulders, my posture. But the way it sat, too still, spine too straight, head slightly tilted like it was listening to something behind it, felt wrong. "That's not me," I whispered. The figure didn't react on the screen. Then it lifted one hand, calmly, slowly, and tapped the steering wheel with a single finger. Tap, tap, tap. My rhythm. I killed the feed, pocketed my phone, and crept closer until I was pressed against the side of the RV. I could hear something inside, not walking, not breathing exactly, but a soft shifting, as if someone were adjusting their posture to get more comfortable in a seat not meant for them. My fingers hovered over the door handle. A soft click sounded from the other side, someone unlocking the door. I stumbled back. The door creaked open an inch, fog spilled inside, and then a second figure appeared behind the first one, also me. Same jacket, same silhouette, same impossible stillness. I backed away, crawling, scrambling until I could stand. A third figure stepped into view, all of them facing away, all of them angled wrong, mimicking human posture but not understanding it. I ran to the passenger side window and wiped it clear. Empty. The kitchen window? Empty. Hallway? Empty. Bedroom? Empty. Every camera feed? Empty. But the door? Still open. I turned back toward the entrance. Someone stood in the doorway, tall, motionless, facing away, my jacket hanging perfectly on its frame. It lifted a hand and waved. A small, stiff, awkward wave. The gesture I make when I'm too nervous to speak. I stumbled backward into the fog. When I blinked, the figure was gone. I fled into the night. Hours later, at a gas station, I checked the auto-synced footage. One frame, in a reflection in the microwave door. Someone sitting in the driver's seat, wearing my jacket, head turned toward the camera, watching. People go missing every year in the Colorado backcountry. Hikers, campers, hunters. I'd read enough caution signs to know the risks. But no one ever warns you that your RV can go missing, and no one warns you that it can come back by itself. I arrived at Red Hollow Campground on a Thursday afternoon, right as the sun began slipping behind the sandstone ridges. The place wasn't busy, maybe 6 or 7 sites occupied, spread far apart. Enough privacy to feel peaceful, enough emptiness to feel a little exposed. I parked my RV at Site 24, right beside one of those thick, bear-proof trash bins. A huge dent on its lid made it easy to remember, like someone had slammed a boulder on it. I hooked up power, leveled the RV, opened the vents. Nothing unusual. The plan was simple. Wake up early, take a 5-hour hike up the canyon loop, come back, eat, relax. I slept fine, woke up fine. Left the RV at 7:40 a.m. sharp, locking it behind me. I remember looking back at it one last time before heading up the trail. A stupid habit, just making sure I'd closed everything. The morning sun hit the windshield at the perfect angle, and I saw my reflection staring back. It felt reassuring, normal. I started the hike. It wasn't until I got back around 1:20 p.m. that everything snapped in half. Because Site 24, the site with the dented trash bin, the site where I knew I'd parked my RV, was completely empty. No tire tracks leading out, no footprints, no note, no sounds of an engine, just a rectangle of flattened dirt where my home should have been. At first, I thought I'd misremembered the site number. I checked Site 23, Site 25, the ones across the loop. Nothing. Site 24 was the right place. I felt something cold crawl up my spine as I walked the perimeter, scanning for anything. Skid marks, dragged cables, broken branches, anything to prove someone had hooked up my RV and hauled it out. But the ground was smooth, undisturbed, like the RV had just evaporated. I waved down a ranger driving through the area. He was an older guy named Evans, with that calm, unshakable expression people get when they've seen every kind of human stupidity imaginable. But even he frowned when he looked at the empty site. "You sure you left it here?" he asked. "My leveling blocks are still in the dirt," I replied, pointing. He crouched, nodded. They were still there, still indented, still showing the weight of something that had rested on them earlier that morning. But the RV was gone. Evans scratched his beard. "RVs don't just walk off on their own, son." But the way he said it didn't sound like he believed it. We checked the campground entrance for security footage. Nothing. We checked the access road for tire marks. Nothing. We asked around. No one saw a thing. By 5 p.m., Evans was ready to file a report. And then, at 5:42 p.m., and I walked back to Site 24 because Evans wanted one last look, and froze. The RV. My RV. It was there, parked perfectly, level, quiet, like it had never left. I didn't go inside at first. I just stood there, 5 or 6 feet away, staring at the RV like it was a wild animal that might bolt again if I got too close. Evans was the brave one. "Well," he muttered, adjusting his belt, "either you forgot where you parked, or something real strange is going on." He didn't sound like he believed either option. When he stepped up and tested the door handle, he frowned. "It's locked." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I locked it this morning." He looked back at me, eyebrows pulling together. "So how'd it get locked again?" I didn't have an answer. He stepped aside, and I unlocked it with my key. The moment the door creaked open, something hit me. A smell. Not a bad one, just wrong. Warm coffee. The kind that isn't fresh anymore, but also hasn't gone cold yet. A smell that lingers when someone just finished drinking it. But I hadn't made coffee. Not today, not before hiking, not last night. I stepped inside. Everything looked ordinary. Nothing smashed, nothing stolen, nothing obviously disturbed. But the longer I stood there, the more every detail felt out of place. My shoes weren't where I left them. One pair sat by the door, like someone had kicked them off casually. My hoodie, the one I always sleep in, was draped over the back of the couch. Not folded, not tossed, but placed, like someone hung it on their shoulders and then took it off deliberately. Evans wandered in behind me. Doesn't look like a break-in. No. It looked like someone had been living in it. I moved to the kitchenette. My metal mug sat upside down in the sink, still dripping slightly. Evans lifted it, sniffed, frowned. "This is warm." My scalp tightened. He checked the stove. One of the burners clicked when he turned it, the indicator light still faintly warm. Someone cooked something, today, in my RV. I walked toward the bed, dread filling my chest. The blanket had an impression on it, a clear one, like someone had lain there for hours. But the most disturbing detail wasn't the blanket. It was the mirror above the headboard, a fresh smear across it, as if someone tall had leaned in close, breathing on the glass, watching themselves for a long, long time, or watching something behind them. Evans cleared his throat. "You should check your cameras. These rigs usually got interior feeds these days." I nodded numbly and grabbed my phone. The app opened. The timeline loaded. Between 8:02 a.m. and 5:36 p.m., my RV recorded movement. Lots of movement. My hand shook as I tapped the first clip. The footage showed me. Me walking from the kitchenette to the couch. Me sitting down. Me tying my shoes. Me adjusting the blinds. The timestamp said 11:14 a.m. At 11:14 a.m., I had been halfway up a canyon ridge. Evans leaned over my shoulder. That you?" "I wasn't here," I whispered. "Weird glitch?" he asked weakly. "But glitches don't tie shoelaces. Glitches don't pace the floor with my exact limp from last week's misstep. Glitches don't breathe heavily after standing up too fast. And glitches definitely don't do what happened next." At 2:51 p.m., the camera caught movement in the kitchen mirror. A second figure, also me, standing just out of frame behind the first one. Evans stepped back. "Okay, I don't like this," he said. Neither did I, because as the clip played, the reflection of the second figure slowly, very slowly, turned toward the camera. But the real horror? There was no one standing there in the physical RV when the footage was taken. The mirror saw something the camera didn't, something inside with whatever was pretending to be me. After watching the footage, Evans stepped outside for a moment. I think he needed air. I did too, but I couldn't make myself leave the doorway. I felt like if I stepped even an inch farther away, the RV might vanish again, and this time it might not come back. When Evans returned, he looked older, not tired, worried. "I can stay until dark," he said quietly. "But after that, I have to drive back to the ranger station. You got somewhere else to stay tonight?" I didn't, and he could see that on my face. He sighed deeply, the kind of sigh that says, "I hate the thing I'm about to suggest. Just try to get some rest, lock up, call us if anything moves." Anything moved. The phrase rattled around in my skull long after his truck disappeared down the access road. By 8 p.m., the campground felt dead. No movement, no voices, no campfires, just the sound of the occasional breeze brushing across gravel. I stayed awake on the couch, staring at the door. At 8:47 p.m., something clicked. A mechanical click, subtle, familiar. It came from the front of the RV, the driver's seat. My pulse spiked. Slowly, very slowly, I leaned forward to peek down the hallway toward the cab area. Both front seats were empty. I exhaled, too soon, because then I heard it again. Click. This time I recognized it instantly. The ignition. Someone was jiggling the key, my keys. I inched toward the cab, heart slamming into my ribs. The closer I got, the colder the air felt, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. Just before I reached the front seats, the engine roared to life. I stumbled backward and hit the wall. The whole RV vibrated as the idle leveled out, humming steadily, smoothly. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. I couldn't see them yet. The angle of the cabinetry blocked my line of sight, but I could see the top of the headrest shift forward under a weight. A person's weight. My weight. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, no, no." The RV lurched. Just a nudge, a tester, a slow roll forward of a foot or two, as if someone inside were figuring out how the pedals worked. Another nudge, then another, like someone practicing, like someone learning. I snapped out of my paralysis long enough to grab my phone. The interior camera flickered alive with static, then showed the back of a head, my head, tilted slightly too far to the left, like the neck wasn't built for that angle. The hands on the wheel looked like mine too. The sleeves, the posture, everything. But the way the body rocked with each pedal push was wrong, delayed, like someone trying to feel the rhythm of movement through unfamiliar bones. The RV jerked again, rolling a little farther. I panicked and lunged for the door handle. But the RV doors, both of them, locked, automatically. My phone buzzed in my hand. A new notification. Driver assist enabled. Ready to navigate. I stared at it in disbelief. My RV didn't even have driver assist. Then a second notification appeared. Destination, Red Hollow Campground. Completed. Completed? The RV lunged again, harder this time. Enough to knock me off balance. I scrambled for the emergency exit window in the bedroom. My fingers fumbled with the latch until finally, it popped open. Cold air rushed in as I shoved the frame outward and squeezed myself through, dropping into the gravel below. I hit the ground hard. The RV kept idling, kept humming, kept waiting. I crawled backward into the dark until I could see clearly into the cab through the front windshield. Someone was in the driver's seat. Someone wearing my jacket. Someone sitting impossibly still, until, slowly, its head turned. Not toward the windshield, not toward the open road, but toward the side window, toward me. I waited until the RV went completely silent before approaching it again. No engine hum. No shifting weight, no movement in the cab, just the kind of quiet that feels staged, calculated. I stayed several yards away, crouched behind a picnic table, and finally opened the GPS history app connected to my RV. I almost didn't want to see what it would show, but I couldn't walk away without knowing. The trip log loaded. A single entry appeared. Date, today. Distance, 207 miles. Duration, 8 hours, 12 minutes. Driver, you. The word you felt like a punch. Not unknown, not unassigned, not blank, you. The RV was claiming I drove it. My mouth went dry as I tapped the entry. A trail line appeared on the map, stretching out of the campground, winding through back roads, then looping across the opposite side of the canyon, before circling back like a lazy, meandering route someone took when they didn't know where they were going, or didn't care. The footage icons popped up, small blue squares marking every time the dash cam recorded something, far more than usual. My hand trembled as I tapped the first one. Dashcam clip number 1, 8:03 a.m. The RV is driving out of the campground. It shouldn't be. I was on the trail at 8:03. The recording showed calm, steady driving. The driver's hands on the wheel looked relaxed, confident. The shoulders looked like mine, jacket like mine. But the head, The head never turned. Not once, not to check mirrors, not to look for traffic. It stared forward the entire time. Even when the RV made turns, my stomach tightened. I tapped the next clip. Dashcam clip number 7, 11:40 a.m. This time the camera angle was different, lower, closer to the driver's side window. It looked like someone was filming from the passenger seat. Someone sitting right next to the driver. My breath hitched. In the reflection on the glass, I could faintly see a shape, a shoulder, part of a neck. Someone leaning forward, watching the driver. Close, too close. And both shapes, both bodies, looked like me. I shut the clip off immediately, pulse hammering. But the worst was still ahead. The final clip had a red icon next to it, marked automatically as significant event. I tapped it with a shaking finger. Dashcam clip number 12, 4:19 p.m. The RV was pulling back into the campground. The sun was lower. The windshield was streaked with dirt and dust from miles of road. The driver was still sitting impossibly straight, still not turning its head. But then, for the first time in the entire trip, it moved. Slowly, deliberately. Its left hand shifted from the wheel to the dashboard camera. It reached toward it, and the moment its fingers touched the lens, something caught my eye. A reflection, not in the windshield, in the shiny black surface of the dashcam casing. A face, not the driver's, my face. But the angle didn't make sense. It wasn't the driver looking into the reflection. It wasn't me holding the camera. It was like someone standing behind me, filming over my shoulder, as if I'd been there the whole time, as if something in the RV believed I should have been there. Static consumed the feed. The clip ended abruptly. My entire body went numb. I wasn't afraid of the RV returning anymore. I was afraid of what it had returned with. Behind me, gravel crunched lightly. I turned, slow, terrified, expecting to see someone. But there was no one, just the campground. Empty, still, silent. Then my phone buzzed. A new notification. New driver profile detected. Would you like to name this user? Under it was a vague silhouette icon. No face, no features, just a blank human outline in my posture. I didn't go back to the RV, not right away, not after what I saw on the dashcam footage. Instead, I walked, stumbled really, down the hill toward the ranger station, following the beam of my flashlight like it was a lifeline. The campground was silent, too silent, like the entire forest was holding its breath. I kept checking behind me. I didn't see movement, didn't hear an engine, didn't hear footsteps, but several times the gravel shifted in a way that made no sense, like weight was pressing down just a second before I turned around. Not human weight, vehicle weight. I walked faster. By the time I reached the main road, my nerves were shredded to pieces. The ranger station was still half a mile away. I figured if I kept moving, kept breathing, kept thinking like myself, I could survive whatever was happening. Then my phone vibrated. A notification flashed across the screen. Vehicle remote access. Driver confirmed. You. I stopped. Another notification appeared immediately after. Welcome back. My stomach twisted painfully. I hadn't gone back. I forced myself to look behind me. Up the hill, far at the edge of the campground, I saw the faintest glow. Headlights. Very slowly, they brightened. The RV was starting. No engine roar yet. No movement. Just the lights warming like something waking up. I backed up onto the shoulder of the road. My phone buzzed again. Engine on. Idle mode. Awaiting driver. I whispered, "No, I'm not coming back." The headlights blinked twice, as if it had heard me, as if it disagreed. Then the engine finally roared, a deep, familiar rumble that I felt in my ribs even from a distance. The RV began rolling forward. Slow, steady, purposeful. Not fast enough to chase, not reckless. It wasn't hunting, it was retrieving. My pulse spiked and I sprinted toward the ranger station. Branches snapped under my feet, my lungs burned, but I didn't stop. The headlights grew brighter behind me, following the dirt road with precise, deliberate navigation. My phone pinged again. Driver out of position. Return to vehicle. I shoved the phone into my pocket and pushed harder, running until my legs screamed. The silhouette of the ranger station finally came into view, dark, locked, empty at this hour. I banged on the door anyway. No answer. Behind me, the RV slowed to a stop near the edge of the parking lot. The engine purred. The lights dimmed, watching me. I pressed myself against the ranger station wall, trying to stay out of view. The RV's side door clicked, not opening, just unlocking, inviting. A soft chime echoed out, the same tone I heard every morning when I stepped inside. "Welcome, driver." But something was wrong with the voice. It sounded like me, my voice, shakier, breathier, like someone had listened to hours of my recordings and was trying, really trying, to get the tone perfect. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them, the RV's front windshield reflected a faint silhouette inside the cab, a shape sitting in the driver's seat, my posture, my shoulders, my head tilt, but wrong. The neck bent at an angle no human could hold comfortably, like it was waiting for something, like it wouldn't straighten until I returned. My phone vibrated one last time. Driver update complete. Private identity, you. The RV door opened fully with a soft hydraulic hiss, not aggressively, patiently, like it wasn't forcing me, like it expected me to remember my place, like it believed I belonged there, in the seat it had prepared, on the path it had learned. A single thought hit me so hard my breath caught. If I don't get inside, what takes my place? The RV's engine lowered to a soft, steady hum, waiting, breathing, becoming. I'm writing this from the ranger station's emergency storage shed. I don't know how long I can stay hidden. I don't know if machinery can get tired of waiting, or if something using my shape, my voice, my habits can lose patience. All I know is this: the RV hasn't started searching again. Not yet. But every few minutes, I hear that soft chime drift through the trees, the sound it plays when I step inside, like it's practicing, like it wants to get it right for when I finally give in. I'd been driving for 9 hours when I finally pulled into the rest stop at mile marker 77. Nothing special about it, just another lonely strip of cracked pavement off Highway 550 in New Mexico, with a row of vending machines, 2 flickering lamps, and a bathroom building that looked abandoned even when it wasn't. Exactly the kind of place you stop only because you're too tired to keep going. I parked my RV at the far end, away from the semi-trucks. They always idle all night, and I needed quiet. Or at least I thought I did. I made a quick dinner, dimmed the lights, and checked the rest stop through my exterior cameras. Just a habit I picked up after too many nights alone on the road. That's when I saw him. A man standing completely still beneath one of the lampposts. Tall, thin, hands hanging at his sides, his head slightly tilted, like he wasn't just standing there, he was listening. At first, I figured he was a late-night traveler stretching his legs. But 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. He never moved, not a step, not a shift of weight, not even a scratch of the nose. Just the same rigid posture, staring in the direction of the trucks, but not quite at them, more like staring through the space between. I leaned toward the window and peeked outside. The lamppost was there, the concrete was there, but the man wasn't. My stomach tightened in a slow, uncomfortable way. I checked the camera again. There he was, still under the lamppost, still perfectly still. I reached up and rubbed the lens with my thumb, as if that would fix anything. Nothing changed. The man remained in the frame. Then, without warning, the camera pinged a new alert. Motion detected. Front door. 5 feet. My heart skipped. I switched to the front door feed. Someone was standing just outside my RV. So close I could only see the side of their head and a shoulder, leaning slightly toward the door, as if listening for movement inside. But the creepiest part wasn't the closeness, it was the silhouette. It was the exact same shape as the man under the lamppost. I flipped back to the lamppost camera. The lamppost was empty, whoever that was. He had crossed the entire rest stop in less than 3 seconds, without making a sound. My first instinct was to turn on every exterior light, but something in me hesitated, like shining a light might confirm he was real. So instead, I stayed frozen and watched the front door camera. The man didn't move, not an inch, not a twitch, just that same unnatural stillness, as if standing completely motionless was the only thing his body knew how to do. Then he leaned closer, not all at once, gradually, a millimeter at a time, until the side of his face filled the camera frame, ear, cheekbone, a sliver of his jaw, listening. I don't know how long I held my breath, but the moment my lungs finally forced an exhale, the camera flickered, just a single glitch of static, and he was gone. I switched through every camera angle, left side, right side, rear, nothing. I checked the lamppost camera again, empty. My pulse finally slowed. Thump. A soft impact against the side of the RV made my entire body lock up. Something brushed along the wall. A slow dragging sound, like fingertips gliding across aluminum. I checked the left side camera. There he was, walking, not toward anything, not away from anything, just circling. His gait was wrong, too smooth, too constant, as if every step landed exactly the same way. No limp, no stutter, no natural shift of balance, just a steady, eerie loop around my RV. Once, twice, 3 times, each lap slower than the last, like he was memorizing the shape of the vehicle, studying it, learning it. On the 3rd pass, he stopped directly beside my bedroom window. He tilted his head again, that same unnatural angle, and leaned in close enough for the camera to capture the top of his hair brushing the glass. Then came the sound, a soft exhale. I heard it through the wall, not loud, almost gentle, but unmistakably human. I couldn't bring myself to look at the window, so I focused on the screen. His breath fogged the glass in the camera view. But when I finally looked over my shoulder, the window was perfectly clear. No fog, no smear, nothing. I turned back to the feed. He was still there, still breathing against the window. The disconnect made my skin crawl. Was the camera seeing something the glass wasn't showing? Or was the glass hiding something the camera couldn't ignore? Before I could make sense of it, motion tracking alerts exploded across my phone. Motion detected, rear. Motion detected, left side. Motion detected, right side, all at once. I flipped to the rear camera, and my blood ran cold. There was another silhouette, same height, same shape, same stillness. Then the right side camera flashed, a 3rd one, identical. 3 figures, all standing the same way, all facing the RV, all waiting. But the lamppost camera, the one that should have shown the whole scene, showed absolutely nothing, just an empty rest stop under flickering lights. For a long moment, none of the 3 silhouettes moved. They just stood there, one at each side of the RV, like they were waiting for me to breathe wrong. I stayed frozen, barely daring to blink. Then the front door alert pinged again. Motion detected. Handle. My throat tightened. I switched to the front door feed. A hand, long, pale, too still, rested on the door handle. Not gripping it, just touching it, like the man was feeling the temperature of the metal. Then the handle twitched, once, twice, then harder. Click, 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 click. He was testing it, testing every angle, every bit of slack in the mechanism. Not jiggling it like a normal person trying to get in, more like mapping it. I backed away from the door. The clicking stopped. Then, clink, a new sound, small, metallic, the sound of a key. I stared at the screen in disbelief as the man lifted his other hand into view. A ring of keys, dozens of them, all mismatched, all old. He tried one, then another, then another. Each time, insert, turn, pause, remove. Not frustrated, not hurried, just methodical. Like someone trying door after door in an apartment complex, except it was my door, my RV, in the middle of a deserted rest stop. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I checked the left side camera. The second figure had stepped closer to that window, barely inches away. His hand rose and tapped, just once, against the glass. A single, deliberate knock. But I didn't hear it inside the RV. The camera showed the knock, the movement, even the vibration in the glass. But in the real world, the pane beside my head stayed perfectly still. No knock, no shake, no sound. Like the camera was seeing a world one layer deeper than mine. Then the tapping began on the right side, then the rear. A slow, coordinated pattern. Different parts of the RV being touched, tested, tapped. I spun between the feeds, heart racing. Front door, another key, another turn. Left side, a face lowering toward the window, too close for the camera to focus. Just a blur of skin and shadow. Right side, a hand dragging softly across the wall, leaving no marks. Rear, a figure bending forward, as if examining the bumper, the storage latch, the undercarriage. Then, thunk. A heavy impact shook the entire RV. The front figure had tried the handle again, but this time with force, enough to rattle the hinges. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own shoes. The handle twisted sharply, then stopped. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. Then, in the calmest, softest click I've ever heard, the lock turned. Not all the way, just enough to say, it's learning. I don't know how long I stood there after the lock twitched. Seconds, minutes, maybe longer. All I know is that the RV felt smaller with every breath I took, like the walls were pressing closer, waiting for me to choose my next mistake. I backed away from the door and grabbed my phone. If I couldn't fight them, I could at least understand what they wanted, or how long they'd been following me. So I opened my dash cam app. The footage list was longer than it should have been. Clips from today, sure, but also clips from days earlier, recordings I didn't remember triggering. I opened the earliest one. Dash cam clip, 3 days ago, 2:14 a.m. The RV was driving through a stretch of empty desert highway. Nothing unusual at first. Then the headlights caught something on the shoulder. A person, standing perfectly still, facing the road. Tall, thin, head tilted just slightly. That same strange listening posture. It could have been anyone, except as the RV passed, he never turned, never reacted, never moved at all. Just watched the empty space my RV had not yet entered. Almost like he knew the RV would pass him. Almost like he was waiting for it. When the RV drove by, the dash cam caught one clear frame of his face, but the lips were wrong. Too thin, too still, like they'd been drawn on. I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't stopped anywhere near that area. No rest stops, no gas stations. So how had I seen him without seeing him? I opened another clip. Clip, 2 days ago, 5:08 p.m. This time the camera angle was off. Lower, tilted, almost like the camera had slipped out of place, except the RV dashboard mount is built not to move. The recording showed the road ahead. Then something crawled into frame, a hand, sliding slowly across the hood. Long fingers, too long, pressing flat against the metal like they were testing the warmth of the engine. But here's the problem. The RV was moving at 60 miles per hour. There is no physical way a person could keep their hand on the hood without being blown off. I felt dizzy. I opened the next clip. Yesterday, 11:51 p.m. This one wasn't recorded from the dash cam. It was recorded from inside the RV. Except, there is no interior dash cam in my RV, none that I installed. But the footage existed. It showed my driver's seat, empty, RV idling. Then, slowly, a figure stepped into frame, appearing from directly behind the seat. The posture, the shoulders, the head tilt. It was the same man, but the face leaned too close to the camera, closer than a human could without hitting it. And then the mouth twitched. The thin line of lips stretched, not opening, not smiling, just lengthening. A fraction of an inch, as if learning, as if practicing. The clip ended without sound. My fingers were shaking as I backed out of the footage. These things, whatever they were, had been following my RV long before mile marker 77. Not just at rest stops, not just on foot. They'd ridden with me, observed me, studied me. Every mile, every night, every stop. Another alert flashed across my screen. Review clip, 10 minutes ago. My heart stopped. I hadn't triggered anything 10 minutes ago. I opened the clip. The screen showed the interior of my RV, recorded from behind me, as I sat watching the dash cam. Something else was in the room with me, standing inches behind my chair, close enough to touch my shoulder, but I hadn't felt a thing. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just stared at the screen showing the inside of my RV, showing me hunched forward, watching footage, and the silhouette standing inches behind me. But there was nothing in the RV now. No footsteps, no breathing, no shift in weight behind me. Either the footage was delayed, or something had been close enough to touch me minutes ago. A sound broke the silence. Tap. Not gentle now. Not exploratory. An intentional knock on the front door. Then another. Tap. Tap, tap. I checked the front camera. The original figure stood there again, head still tilted, body rigid, as if he'd returned to repeat a step he'd practiced earlier. But this time, his hand wasn't empty. He held a crowbar. My pulse spiked so hard I felt it in my teeth. He lifted the bar slowly, not like a frantic intruder, but like someone who had studied how the door was built and knew exactly where to hit. The first strike shook the entire RV. Thud. Dust fell from the ceiling seam. The door frame screamed under the pressure. I stumbled backward toward the driver's seat. The second figure appeared on the left side, then the third on the right, then a fourth at the rear. They moved in unison, not coordinated like trained attackers, but synchronized in a way that felt wrong, like four reflections of the same idea executing the same command. The crowbar slammed the door again. Thud. Clang. Something metal snapped inside the lock mechanism. My panic finally overpowered my paralysis. I lunged into the driver's seat, slammed the key into the ignition, and twisted. The engine coughed. Once. Twice. "Hurry, hurry, come on," I whispered. The third try caught. The RV roared awake, but the noise didn't scare them. None of them flinched. The man with the crowbar leaned closer to the door and pressed his ear to it, listening to the vibration of the engine, the way a mechanic listens to diagnose an engine problem. Then he raised the crowbar again. Bang. The whole RV shuddered sideways. I slammed the transmission into drive. The figure in front stepped forward, not to block me, but to place a hand on the hood, as if feeling the engine rumble beneath his palm. His fingers spread unnaturally wide. I floored it. The RV lurched forward, and the figure vanished from view. Not thrown, not run over, simply gone. The tires screeched as I swerved out of the rest stop, gravel spraying behind me. The mirrors shook violently. Then, in the reflection of the right side mirror, a shape crawled out from beneath the RV. Not running, not standing, crawling, hands pulling, legs dragging, like something that hadn't yet learned how to walk the way a human does. I jerked the wheel. The mirror snapped in and the shape disappeared. The highway opened ahead of me, empty, endless. I pushed the RV past 70 miles per hour. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Then the underneath of the RV made a sound I will never forget. A metallic scraping, not constant, rhythmic. Shht, shht, shht. As if something was dragging itself along the underside, keeping pace, trying to find a seam, a latch, a way in. I drove faster. The scraping followed. I hit 80, still there. I hit 90, still there. Then, all at once, silence. The scraping stopped. For one breath, one heartbeat, I felt relief. Until the dash cam pinged a new alert. Interior movement detected. I slammed the brakes. The RV fishtailed but stayed upright. My lungs locked. Interior movement? Inside? I stared at the alert flashing on the screen, and my hands went numb. Source: bedroom storage compartment. The compartment under my bed, the one that only opens from inside the RV. I turned slowly, afraid to look but more afraid not to. The hallway behind me was dark, still, silent, but not empty. I felt it, a shift in the air, a weight, the presence of something that had found a new way in. And I realized they didn't need the door, they just needed time. By the time the sun finally rose, the sky looked washed out, the kind of pale, empty color that makes you feel exposed. I'd driven for hours without stopping, without thinking, without daring to look in the mirrors. When I finally pulled into a small RV repair shop outside Farmington, I felt like I was stepping into someone else's body. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were numb. A man in grease-stained overalls stepped out of the garage, wiping his palms on a rag. "You look like hell," he said, not unkindly. "What happened? Hit a deer?" "No," I said. "Something's wrong underneath. I heard scraping." He raised an eyebrow. "Scraping from where?" "From under the floor, like metal dragging." He frowned, motioning for me to pull into the bay. I waited in the customer area, trying not to replay the night in my head. The crawling shape under the RV, the figures circling me, the crowbar hitting the door, the movement alert from inside the bedroom. Every few minutes, I checked the cameras on my phone. Nothing. Just sunlight. Just empty parking lot. Normal should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt like bait. After about 20 minutes, the mechanic came back. But he wasn't wiping his hands anymore. He was pale. "Sir," he said carefully, "I need you to come look at this." My stomach sank. We walked around to the lift where the RV hung 6 feet in the air. "Look here," he said, pointing to the metal frame near the rear axle. I felt the breath leave my body. Gouges, deep, uneven gouges, ran along the length of the support beam, as if metal had been scraped by something with fingers. Not claws, not tools, fingers. My throat tightened. "We also found this," the mechanic added, moving toward the front underside. The metal panel beneath the passenger side was bent inward, not dented by impact, but bent the wrong way, as if something had been pulling itself toward the interior of the RV. He looked at me again, hesitant. Whatever caused this, it wasn't the road, and it wasn't an animal. I swallowed hard, trying to form words, but nothing came. "Did someone try to stow away under here?" he asked. He meant it as a guess, a logical explanation. But the image that came to my mind wasn't a hitchhiker clinging to the underside of the RV. It was the shape crawling out from beneath me in the mirror, the long fingers gripping the chassis, the rhythmic scraping that kept perfect pace with the RV at 80 miles per hour. My knees felt weak. The mechanic touched my shoulder gently. "We're gonna need a few hours to rebolt the panel and check the frame. You can wait inside. There's coffee." I nodded, but my head felt detached, floating. Inside the waiting room, I sat down and forced myself to breathe. For the first time since the night started, I felt almost safe. Almost. I opened my phone to check the RV cameras again. All feeds loaded normally. Bedroom, empty. Kitchen, empty. Cab, empty. Exterior, nothing but morning dust and sunlight. My pulse slowly steadied. Maybe it was over. Maybe whatever that was, those things, left when the RV stopped moving, when the engine died, when they couldn't follow anymore. For a few minutes, the world felt real again. Then my phone buzzed. A soft vibration, an alert. Motion detected. Bedroom storage compartment. My breath froze in my chest. That made no sense. No one could get into the RV. The keys were in my pocket. It was hanging 6 feet in the air on the lift. Hands shaking, I tapped the alert. The screen went black for a second. Then the feed loaded. A close, suffocating shot from inside the storage compartment beneath the bed. Dark fabric, wood panel, dust. Then something shifted. Just a small movement, like fabric being pushed aside. A shape pressed against the compartment door from the inside, gently, slowly, with the same deliberate patience as the knock on the RV door the night before. The mechanic's voice drifted from outside the waiting room. "We're almost done with the inspection. Shouldn't be long." I stared at the phone, unable to speak, unable to breathe. Inside the video feed, the compartment door flexed outward, just a fraction of an inch, as if something was testing it. Then, in the dim light, a single long finger curled into view and tapped lightly on the inside of the door. Tap. Practicing. Learning. Waiting.
Some places on the road stay with you, long after you've driven miles away from them. A quiet rest stop, a dark highway, a sound you can't explain beneath the floor of your RV. If you made it to the end, thank you for being here tonight. And remember, the stories I shared aren't just warnings. They're reminders that even the most ordinary places can hide something watching, something waiting. If you'd like more true horror stories, there are plenty of nightmares just a click away on this channel. Stay safe out there. Stay aware, and until the next story, don't ignore the noises your RV makes in the dark.